Makebi Zulu's open letter to HH, the message State House can't ignore. What happens when one of Zambia's most influential lawyers and political figures decides to challenge the president directly, publicly, boldly, and without fear? Tonight, we break down Makebi Zulu's explosive open letter to President Hakainde Hichilema, a letter that is already shaking State House, energizing the opposition, and raising tough questions that cannot be ignored. Why did Zulu choose to go public? What is he warning the president about? And most importantly, how will this letter impact the political battlefield going into 2026? Stay with us, because what you're about to hear could redefine Zambia's political landscape. Makebi Zulu's open letter to HH, the message State House can't ignore. YouTube News documentary script. Part 1 Dramatic hook, opening 60 to 90 seconds. Good day, viewers. Welcome to another edition of the InspirAfrica Official. I'm Nakash. Well, what a week it's been. The political temperature in Lusaka is rising, and the constitutional debate continues to divide the nation. But today, we bring you a story that's sending shockwaves through the corridors of State House. Picture this, a letter. Not just any letter, but a firm, principled demand addressed directly to the President of the Republic of Zambia. Typed on white paper, bearing a date December 3, 2025, and signed by one name that has become synonymous with constitutional advocacy and opposition defiance, Makebi Zulu. In the letter, Zulu doesn't ask. He doesn't plead. He demands that President Hakainde Hichilema immediately halt what critics are calling one of the most controversial constitutional maneuvers in Zambia's recent history, Constitution Amendment Bill No. 7 of 2025. But here's where it gets really interesting. What could drive a lawyer, a political aspirant, and a prominent opposition voice to pen such a bold confrontation to the sitting head of state? What is in Bill 7 that has civil society, the Law Association of Zambia, and now Makebi Zulu drawing a line in the sand? Is this a principled stand for democracy, or is it political theater disguised as constitutional defense? And perhaps the most pressing question, when a constitutional court has already declared a bill unconstitutional, rendering it null and void, why is the government still pushing forward? What's at stake here, control over parliament, electoral advantage, or something even deeper? And what happens when the rule of law collides head-on with political ambition? Could this letter be the spark that ignites a constitutional crisis just months before the 2026 elections? Will State House respond, or will they choose silence? And if they ignore this warning, what will be the cost to Zambia's democracy? Factual foundation, background and timeline. The revelation came to light on December 4, 2025, when Makebi Zulu's open letter to President Hakainde Hichilema was published on the Zambian Observer website. The document immediately began circulating across social media platforms, sparking heated debate among political analysts, civil society groups, and ordinary Zambians. But to understand the gravity of this letter, we must first rewind the clock. The story begins in March 2025, when the Zambian government announced plans to amend the constitution. By May 2025, the Ministry of Justice introduced the Constitution of Zambia Amendment Bill No. 7 of 2025 to the National Assembly. The bill proposed sweeping changes, expanding parliament from 156 to 211 elected members, introducing a mixed-member proportional representation system, removing two-term limits for local government leaders, and revising electoral procedures. Almost immediately, opposition voices raised red flags. Members of Parliament Munir Zulu and Celestine Mukandila filed a challenge in the Constitutional Court, arguing that the amendment process violated constitutional requirements for wide public consultation under Article 79. On June 25, 2025, Bill 7 received its first reading in Parliament. The next day, June 26, debate grew heated. Critics accused the government of attempting to consolidate power and bypass constitutional safeguards. Under mounting pressure, President Hichilema announced that Bill 7 would be deferred to allow for more consultation. But the legal wheels were already turning. On June 27, 2025, just one day after the president's announcement, the Constitutional Court delivered a landmark ruling. The court declared that Bill 7 was unconstitutional, citing its failure to meet the threshold of wide and meaningful public consultation required by Article 79 of the Constitution. The court emphasized that the constitution belongs to the people, not to the executive or legislature, and that any amendment process must be people-driven and led by an independent body. The ruling was clear: Bill 7 was a nullity. Legally void. Dead in the water. Or so everyone thought. In October 2025, following civil society pressure, the government established a 25-member technical committee to revive constitutional reform efforts. The committee worked through November, and on December 1, 2025, it submitted its report in draft bill to President Hichilema. Then, something extraordinary happened. Despite the Constitutional Court's ruling, despite the Law Association of Zambia's calls for withdrawal, despite widespread civil society opposition, Bill 7 was returned to the National Assembly for consideration. And that's when Makebi Zulu decided he had seen enough. On December 3, 2025, he penned his open letter, demanding that the president immediately cease all efforts to proceed with Bill 7. Direct evidence. Let's hear directly from Makebi Zulu's letter. His words are precise, legal, and unyielding. This letter is a firm and principled demand that your government immediately ceases all efforts to proceed with the Constitution Amendment, Bill No. 7 of 2025, in order to protect Zambia's democracy, uphold the authority of the Constitution, and honor the clear will of the people. Zulu didn't mince words. He laid out three fundamental arguments against the bill. First, constitutional grounds. Zulu wrote, Bill 7 stands on unconstitutional ground. The Constitutional Court has already pronounced that the process leading to the bill did not meet the threshold of wide and meaningful public consultation required by Article 79, rendering it inconsistent with the Constitution and therefore void. He continuing with, repackaging, or reintroducing Bill 7 in defiance of this ruling would signal contempt for judicial authority and erode the rule of law that your administration pledged to restore. Second, he pointed to democratic stakeholders' rejection. The Law Association of Zambia has publicly called for the withdrawal of the bill, warning that it lacks broad-based citizen participation and risks weakening democratic checks and balances, Zulu stated in the letter. And third, he labeled the bill substantively dangerous: provisions that expand parliament while centralizing power, tamper with by-elections, and weaken local government would entrench incumbents rather than empower citizens, turning constitutional reform into a tool for political advantage instead of national progress. But Zulu didn't stop there. He went personal, directly challenging President Hichilema's legacy. Your Excellency, your rise to power was anchored in promises of a people-driven constitution, respect for the rule of law, and the reversal of past attempts to manipulate the supreme law for partisan gain. Persisting with Bill 7, or attempting to reintroduce it through the back door, would mirror the very abuses your government once condemned and would stain your legacy as a reformer. The letter concluded with three explicit demands. Publicly and unequivocally withdraws Constitution Amendment, Bill No. 7 of 2025 in its entirety. Commits that any future constitutional reforms will be people-driven, led by an independent, nonpartisan body, and anchored in genuine nationwide consultation before any text is drafted. Prioritizes implementation of the existing constitution and delivery on socio-economic promises over destabilizing, divisive constitutional engineering. And the final line? A historical warning: the Constitution belongs to the people of Zambia, not to any temporary majority in parliament or any sitting government. History will judge harshly any leadership that chooses to ignore a clear constitutional court ruling and the unmistakable voice of citizens. Deeper analysis, implications and reactions. So what does this all mean? And why does it matter? Let's start with the legal implications. Constitutional lawyer Meliali Batakathi has warned that the retabling of Bill May 7 attract further litigation. He calls the process illegal and questions why a technical committee was even appointed if the government intended to stick with the same bill the court had already nullified. Senior counsel John Sangwa went even further. In a recent analysis, Sangwa argued that Bill 7 has no legal existence following the Constitutional Court's ruling. He wrote that the bill is legally dead and cannot be resuscitated without starting the amendment process from scratch with proper public consultation. Green Party President Peterson Kamba took the most extreme position, calling continued efforts to implement Bill 7 an act of treason. Sinkamba argued that implementing a law declared unconstitutional by the Constitutional Court violates Article 3 of the Constitution and represents a breach of the oath sworn by the President and government officials. But what about public reaction? The responses have been sharply divided along political lines. Supporters of the government argue that the technical committee process addressed the court's concerns and that expanding parliament would improve representation. Some have accused Makebi Zulu of political grandstanding, pointing out that he is a PF presidential aspirant with clear political motivations. Online comments on the letter have been harsh. One commenter wrote, "This man failed to heed advice to bury his boss and now he wants to advise Bali," referring to the ongoing controversy over Edgar Lungu's burial. Another stated, "He's holding the body of a former Republican president at ransom in a foreign country and has the audacity to come back to Zambia to publicly lecture the head of state." But civil society organizations have rallied behind the core message. The Oasis Forum, a coalition of church organizations, met with President Hichilema on November 28, 2025, urging him to abandon his plans to amend the constitution before the 2026 election. According to John Sangwa, the outcome was not satisfactory and the president remains determined to proceed with constitutional amendments. The Law Association of Zambia has been consistent in its position. Ilazi President Lungisani Zulu, no relation to Makebi Zulu, issued a statement after the Constitutional Court ruling, emphasizing that Bill 7 is null and void and urging the government to postpone all constitutional reform efforts until after the 2026 elections. Then there's the political calculation. Makebi Zulu is currently vying for the Patriotic Front presidency and has positioned himself as a defender of Edgar Lungu's legacy. Some analysts see this letter as part of a broader opposition strategy to paint the UPND government as authoritarian and power-hungry ahead of the 2026 elections. But others argue that regardless of Zulu's political motivations, his legal arguments have merit. The Constitutional Court's ruling was clear and unambiguous. The question isn't whether Makebi Zulu has political ambitions, the question is whether the government will respect the Constitutional Court's authority. And that brings us to the elephant in the room. What happens if Parliament proceeds with Bill 7? Legal experts predict immediate litigation, potential nullification, and what one analyst called unmanageable institutional instability. Constitutional lawyer Thandai Keti Zengoma wrote in her own open letter to MPs, "Democracy rarely collapses in one dramatic event, it erodes quietly when institutions choose convenience over duty." The timing is also significant. With elections scheduled for 2026, any constitutional changes made now will directly affect the electoral landscape. Critics argue that expanding parliament and changing electoral rules months before an election reeks of gerrymandering and power consolidation. And finally, there's the question of precedent. If a government can ignore a constitutional court ruling declaring a bill unconstitutional, what does that mean for the separation of powers? What does it mean for judicial independence? And what message does it send to future governments about constitutional limits? Thank you for watching another edition of InspirAfrica Official. This story is far from over. Makebi Zulu has thrown down the gauntlet. The Constitutional Court has spoken. Civil society has raised its voice. And Parliament now faces a defining choice. Will they respect the court's ruling and withdraw Bill 7? Or will they push forward, risking constitutional crisis and legal chaos? What do you think? Is Makebi Zulu right to demand the immediate withdrawal of Bill 7? Or is the government justified in pursuing constitutional reforms ahead of the 2026 elections? Should the Constitution be amended months before a general election, or should such fundamental changes wait for a more stable political climate? Drop your comments below. We want to hear from you. Tell us what you think about Bill 7, about Makebi Zulu's letter, about the Constitutional Court's ruling, and about what this all means for Zambia's democracy. If you enjoyed this documentary, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and ring the notification bell so you never miss our coverage of Zambian politics and current affairs. We'll be following this story closely and bringing you updates as they develop. Will State House respond to Makebi Zulu's letter? Will Parliament defy the Constitutional Court? Or will cooler heads prevail? We'll find out soon enough. Until then, stay informed, stay engaged, and stay vigilant. Democracy doesn't defend itself, it requires active citizens who will stand up when power overreaches. I'm Nakash, and I'll see you tomorrow with more news, more analysis, and more stories that matter. Take care, and see you soon.